Okay, welcome everyone to Think Capital. We are live on YouTube, I believe, and we are live on X. It's great to have everyone here. We'll just wait a few seconds while the rooms fill up or the chat rooms. Let's have a look to see who's online. If you guys can see me, can hear me, just type a one in the chat. Let me know where you are connecting from, and we'll begin very shortly. I've been doing a little bit of traveling, so I haven't been able to join one of these community calls for Think Capital this month. But I'm back from my travels. I was in Dubai recently and had an amazing time there. Met some seven-figure traders, met some really profitable traders out there, and we had a lot of discussions about the topic that I'm covering today. So I'm really excited to get into that topic with you guys. Okay, let's see if I can see. Hopefully I can see your comments, guys. Let's see who's in here. Okay. Give me a sec, guys. Just having some connection issues. Here we go. Okay. All right, I can see the chat now. Welcome, guys. Can you hear me okay? Just type a one in the chat or type a yes. And then we can begin. Okay. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Go. All right. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining. Today, I'm going to be discussing a really interesting topic that I've been noticing is a big struggle for traders, and that is dealing with anger and frustration in your trading. And this is a very big issue because when you don't know how to deal with a loss and you feel that frustration, it can become very overwhelming. Now, type a one in the chat if this is something that you struggle with. Do you struggle with uh, a frustrating reaction when you take a loss? Or when there is a mistake that you made, do you feel this rage coming when things don't go your way? And these are actually very normal reactions. But in trading, they don't serve us at all. So that's what I want to cover in today's topic with you guys. Now, I've coached hundreds of traders, and anger is one of those very common emotions. So I want to try and understand this anger and frustration with you guys. And I want to talk to you about the neuroscience behind the emotional hijacking of anger. And then we'll talk about some practical tools and how you can manage your emotions in real time. And I'll show you an example of a trader who's was truly transformed after he managed to master his anger and emotions. Okay, and then I'll let you know how you can get support if you are dealing with this type of anger in your trading. Welcome, guys. I see I see you guys in the chat. Okay, now in trading, it feels like an emotional roller coaster. 1 minute you're feeling calm, you're feeling composed. Next minute, you're suddenly excited. You feel this adrenaline, you feel the euphoria, you feel like you can't wait until market opens. And then as soon as you enter a trade, you're anticipating what's about to happen next. And suddenly, as you enter, a few minutes later, the trade is already in drawdown, and you start to have those thoughts start of doubt. Am I wrong in this? Did I do my analysis properly? And you end up experiencing all sorts of emotions. You go from very high to very low to very high to very low. This volatility of emotion is it's a real thing, and it just demonstrates that you are just reacting like a normal human being. Now, I've had my fair share of emotional roller coasters in my trading. Back when I was in university studying psychology, of all things, I ended up being invited to a West End casino in London. And as you can imagine, I was hooked. I made money, I lost money, I tripled my money in one day, lost all the profits. Eventually, I lost not only my life savings, but I lost my student loan. And I felt really ashamed because when I had to admit this to my mother, I saw the her face of disappointment. And at that moment, I felt embarrassed. I felt disappointed in myself. And I made her a promise that I'm going to figure this out one way or another. I'm going to not only make my money back, but I'm also going to provide for my mother, provide for my family. And that's when I needed to build a framework. I needed to understand where my emotions were coming from, how I can recognize them, and how I can stop myself from making the same mistakes. Because otherwise, I was I would end up continuously gambling. So when I started trading and I ended up gambling, I knew then losing money in the casino and losing money in trading it's like it's the same thing. There's an element of addiction. There's an element of excitement. And so I realized very quickly that I needed to develop the tools, the routines, the systems, the mental models, so I don't end up being a gambler for the rest of my life. So what I realized was that the real problem isn't your strategy. The real problem lies in your impulsive reactions. Okay? Because most of you are quite good at technical analysis. Most of you are very good with predicting where price is. You're very good at pattern recognition. You recognize market shifts. You identify the daily bias. You Most of you are very accurate in understanding where price is going. So if the problem isn't the strategy, then what is? It's your emotions. It's your impulsive reactions that override the strategy. Let me know in the chat, type a two in the chat if you've experienced this moment where you lose control. It's like you become a different person. And the person that you become ends up blowing accounts, ends up gambling more money away, and an addictive cycle. Now, I would I believe that over 95% of traders are struggling in this uh, self-sabotage loop of big emotional highs and big emotional lows. So let's talk about the neuroscience of what's actually happening in your brain when you experience these emotions, these impulsive reactions that override your logic. There's this hijacking of a default survival mechanism, your fight or flight. And this is the part of your brain that's designed for you to be impulsive, to react quickly because you are under threat. Your brain is under threat. So when you experience this stress and feeling under threat, you now hijacked. And most of us are going to respond with anger and frustration. Now, what triggers this? It's usually a mistake. It's usually price. You missed a trade, so price leaves without you. It might be that your trade copier wasn't working. It was offline for some reason, and you weren't entered on your slave accounts. There's so many different reasons, right? So you have this massive spike in cortisol levels, and when this occurs, your focus narrows, and you start making poor decisions. Okay, and this is you can see this in brain scans. You can see the spike in cortisol. Suddenly you lose your focus and even your memory. You forget your rules. Who knows what I'm talking about? Who's experienced this type of hijacking, emotional, impulsive hijacking in your trading? And so what we end up doing is we start seeking things that give us a boost in dopamine. So we start over leveraging. We start FOMOing into positions. We start entering impulsively, trying to make back the loss. And when you get away with it, bang, you're hit with a massive dose of dopamine. It feels good to break your rules and make money, doesn't it? Be honest with me, guys. How good does it feel when you break your rules and you make money? Let me know in the chat. Aldrin says that his brain gets hijacked the entire trading day. Oh man, I feel you there, brother. It feels like that, doesn't it? It means something needs to change. So what are the common triggers that trigger this anger and frustration in your trading? Well, firstly is unrealistic expectations. You can't expect to break your rules and make money. You can't expect to win every day. Okay? You can't expect to get a payout every single month. So we set all of these unrealistic expectations in a market that changes, a market that is chaotic, a market that nobody really knows where price is going next. So how can you make these expectations? Well, it's because of what you see on social media. It's what you see with the advertising, the marketing of prop firms. They make it look so easy, don't they? Everybody makes it look easy. Everyone is a profitable trader on social media. Have you noticed? Now, when you tie your expectations and your identity together, you're in trouble. Because when you are not achieving what everyone on social media is doing, when you're not on when you're not being interviewed by the prop firm, you don't have 10,000 followers on Instagram, then you begin to look down at yourself. Your identity begins to have cracks. Your self-worth is negative, and this ties into your results. You're missing the emotional tools required to be able to change the way you think. You need to have a completely new perspective. Is this making sense, guys? Type a yes in the chat for me. Yeah, you guys know, I can see in the chat, you know who those influencers are, flexing the Lamborghinis and the Bugattis. Yeah, yeah, it's misleading. You're right. Parry's right. It's misleading. It is a bad influence. Now, I want to talk about a particular case study of one of my first clients, Kyle. You also know him as Jade Cap. Now, whenever he experienced anger, it was usually after two losses in a row, he would break all the rules and he would have to start again. Okay. And he might have 2 weeks, 3 weeks of good performance, but then comes a few losses and the anger will kick in and he'll blow everything. And so when I started coaching him in 2021, I wanted to isolate the moments of when he experienced this anger. We created the systems. I held him accountable to these systems. Fast forward to today, he's the most profitable trader in the industry with $4.5 million in payouts. I highly recommend you watch his recent podcast interview on Chart Fanatics and also, I believe, on Words of Wisdom. He's had multiple interviews. And this is the power of knowing how to identify the anger where it comes from, and creating and having the tools to overcome and override this behavior and stick to your systems, stick to the process. And when you have a coach, when you have accountability, that's a game changer. So these are some of the tools that I use with my clients, like Kyle. I teach my clients how to breathe, how to create priming techniques. Okay. Now, these tools that we're going to explore are very, very powerful. When we talk about visualization, this is a very powerful technique where you create the mental imagery of trading your particular setup, the mental imagery of experiencing a loss and then acting according to your rules, experiencing the anger, but then implementing the correct protocol, and all this through a visualization. Next, we have emotional journaling. This tool encourages us to articulate our feelings and our thoughts, because if you don't, you're going to bottle it in, you're going to keep it inside, and that's when it starts to turn into anger. Think about how when you boil a kettle, those old school kettles, that when it reaches boiling point, it starts whistling. That's what happens when we don't express and articulate our emotions. The pressure increases, and suddenly we reach boiling point, and that's when we explode. You want to be very careful with this. So by regularly documenting your experiences in your trading, you start to identify the patterns in your behavior and your responses. And this is huge, guys. Understanding your own behaviors and how you respond. This facilitates personal growth and as well as emotional regulation. The weekly scorecard, should I say, or daily scorecard. This is such a valuable resource because it fosters accountability through rule-based uh, processes. By following the rules, you a high score. Okay, so we can gauge your progress and start identifying the areas you need improvement in. So this is a more structured approach and allows you to celebrate when you follow your rules instead of celebrating when you have a big win. And when you start doing this, when you start gamifying the process, celebrating good trading, good rule adherence, when you do this, this is when you begin to reprogram your thinking and your responses. This is very powerful stuff. And lastly, the breath work and the priming techniques, these are important and essential to managing your stress. So you maintain mental clarity, where you maintain control and composure, calmness, because you know what you're doing, because you're just repeating a process day in, day out. So by incorporating breathwork into your daily routine and priming, you can better prepare yourself. It's all about preparation, okay? And this allows you to take on the challenges of a trading session and the unexpected turns in price. And when stress and anger suddenly comes at you, you're no longer going to be a victim of your anger. You are going to start controlling it. This is crucial, guys. So what happens if you don't take action? What happens if you ignore your anger? So when emotions run high, your decision making suffers. And this leads to poor performance. And this very quickly, you start to erode your capital as well as your mental capital. And it starts feeling devastating. Every single loss just hurts more and more. And then now this is the point where your self-esteem, your self-worth begins to have an impact. So this is why it's so crucial to do something about it. Yeah. Now, the fundamental truth about trading is that you can't trade out of your nervous system. You can't trade your emotions. You can't trade the way your body is feeling, because if you do, if you continue trading when you're feeling impulsive, this is a problem. So no matter how skilled you are as a trader, if you if your emotional responses are not managed, then this is going to undermine your trading strategy. All that hard work, all that investment you put into learning your strategy, all those hours and months of back testing, it goes out the window. So just recognizing your anger is very liberating. And this emphasizes the, the need for emotional awareness and regulation, because this is the core components of trading success. Trading psychology, the core of it is emotional awareness. That's the core of it. How aware are you? Because if you're not aware and you're just acting on impulse, then you're just lost. Of course you are going to self-sabotage because you don't have control. And this is a problem. This is a big problem. Leonie Jack says, man, this was exactly what I needed today. The clarity you brought to price action and liquidity zones is insane. You're one of the best educators. Thanks, Leonie. Appreciate that. But we're talking about psychology today, emotions and anger. Now, let's talk about the sniper trader path to emotional mastery. The reason why my clients are so successful is because of the amount of support that they get, the weekly live calls, the constant drills of emotional awareness and priming, breath work, completing the daily scorecard, receiving feedback, and having this type of routine and feedback loop is so crucial. The feedback loop is essential to constantly improve. And so when you have that type of community, when you have that type of mentorship, amazing things happen. And this is how me and my team, we've been able to help so many traders. This formula has worked for hundreds of traders to be able to get funded and get payouts. We're now we're closing in on $3 million in payouts, which is insane. I think we're about 2.6 at this stage. And over around $25 million in funded capital unlocked. Because this is the system that works for traders, because it's the system that high performing teams use. High level athletes use a very similar framework, because when you're a high level athlete like Tiger Woods, like LeBron James, like Cristiano Ronaldo, like Lionel Messi. When you are at this high level, there's a lot of emotional pressure, f- financial pressure. They're representing their country. They have sponsors that they have to win the competition in order to reach the highest levels of sponsorship. They have their team, they have their coaches, so they have their countries all relying on them, all that weight on their shoulder. They need constant coaching, constant emotional drills, constant priming, breath work, scorecards. They have to rewatch their games, look at every single technique, study their opponent, study the strategy. Constant, constant. It's the same thing in trading. And this is what me and my team, we pride ourselves. We really enjoy this process. We're obsessed with working with traders. So, are you guys ready to transform your trading? Are you guys ready to actually not become a victim of your anger and frustration? Because you got to draw a line in the sand right now. You either continue the way you are or you do something about it from today. Because what you can begin to track and measure, you can begin to control. This is very, very important you understand this. Now, the best way to get access to me, to send me a message, you can contact me on Instagram on rodrigo.trader.coach. So now we'll do some Q&A for the last few minutes, and I hope today has been very informative for you guys. Let's head over to the chat for those who have questions. Right, Azim has a question asking, do I think, what do you think? Skills matter or psychology? Okay, so, well, both. You, a skill can be a technical skill, but can also be a psychological skill. And a skill is a rule, a protocol, something that is going to require you to implement on a consistent basis. That when you do, gives you the result, a particular outcome. So we need to practice multiple skills. Trading requires a multifaceted approach. You need technical skills, risk management skills, psychological skills, mental skills, physical skills. You need to have the stamina. You need to have the focus. Focus is a skill. How good is your focus? How long does it how long does your focus last? Emotional awareness is a skill. Identifying the direction of the day. This is a skill. So each one of these requires a focus on identifying on what skills you need, what skills you're good at, what skills you are bad at. The skills that you're bad at, these are your weak points. You need to develop these skills. Now, most traders don't even understand their weaknesses properly. And that's where coaching comes in, because coaches can identify those weaknesses and guide you through those so that they don't stop you from your profitability. So we've got a question here. Right, we got a question here. How do you cope with market flexibility? What I mean is that if I look out for a long and the market is presenting a short, how do you flip your bias and take the right direction? Okay, now this approach of changing direction for the day, this is something that you must be very confident with. This has to be something that you've practiced. This is something that you have data on. Okay, if you don't have data on flipping direction, then you shouldn't be flipping direction. So you need to practice doing this. That's why the back testing is essential. That is why simulating is essential. And you have software like TradeZilla back testing that you can simulate, FX Replay where you can simulate. And when you are simulating, practice flipping direction, collect that data. After 100 trades, how does that perform when you flip direction as opposed to just sticking to the direction? Now, if you have a higher time frame bias, if you stick to that direction, then you are pro trend. And if you switch, if you flip it and you're now suddenly counter trend, then there's nothing wrong with that. But do you have the data for it? Have you practiced it enough to be confident that you can do that? And what limits do you have in place? How many counter trend trades do you allow yourself? So if you take two pro trend trades and you're wrong, and then you want to flip the direction, do you take another two or just one? And is the risk the same? And what is your daily risk for the day if you are going to flip direction? And do you do that within the same session or do you do that in the next session? This is, as you can see, there's many questions, and the only way to find out is through the back testing. So there's another question here: how to time and price converging a high probability signal for entries? Well, this is a question regarding technicals. It all depends on your strategy. Okay, it all depends on how you predict or forecast a daily trend and how your entry model is, how you manage the trade, how much risk you place. This is why it's important to always have a mentor. You should have a technical mentor and you should have a psychological mentor or coach. My pleasure. Any more questions, guys? I'm currently looking at all the questions on the YouTube live chat. Let's see if there's any questions at the top. No, doesn't look like. Wait, I think if there's no more questions, that means that I may have answered all your questions during the presentation. I hope that this conversation has brought you immense value, reminded you how important emotional awareness is, reminded you that, look, anger, frustration is normal. It shows that you have normal emotional reactions. However, in trading, these normal reactions can lead to self sabotage, to breaking rules, to blowing up accounts. So it is crucial that you implement some of the techniques, some of the practical tips that I've given you in today's conversation. We've got a question just coming from Azim about my personal experiencing in breaking my own risk management rules. Yes, I have, like I told you, my story. Not only did I lose my life savings twice, one from gambling in the casino, and secondly, in my first year of trading, but and it was because I broke my risk management rules. I just kept on trading, kept increasing my risk, trying to make back my losses. So I have first-hand experience. I know exactly what it feels like to experience anger, frustration, and losing control. I've been there. I know how painful it is. And that's why I developed my own systems. And eventually I taught these systems. I coached other traders to follow these systems. You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. And I would like to thank Think Capital once again for inviting me to this community, these live streams. I think they provide so much value to you. And I hope to continue because next week we have a very interesting talk. Next week we'll be talking about the relationship, your relationship with money. So make sure that you tune in next week. It will be on Wednesday, the 28th of May. That's the next time. And we're going to be talking about money and your relationship with it. So I'm glad it's been awesome today. I've had a great time. You guys have been very engaging. So make sure you save this video, save this call, and send it to another trader who needs to hear this. A trader who's struggling with their psychology, struggling with their anger. Send them this conversation because it's very, very important. And if you have any questions, any more questions, if you would like some coaching, then reach out to me on Instagram. On my tag is rodrigo.trader.coach. So on that note, thank you very much for attending, and I'll see you next week. Make sure that you come along and have your notepad ready because we're going to talk about your relationship with money. I'll see you then, guys. Take care.